This episode is brought to you by Roundtable Group, the experts on experts. We've been connecting attorneys with experts for over 30 years. Find out more at roundtablegroup.com.
Welcome to Engaging Experts. I'm your host, Noah Ballmer, and today I'm excited to welcome David Ciemny to the show. Mr. Ciemny is the CEO of Ciemny Inc., a consulting business development and expert witnesses service firm operating in the music, corporate event, and direct sales industries. Mr. Ciemny, welcome to Engaging Experts.
Thank you, Noah. Great to be here.
Well, let's jump into it. You have an extensive background in entertainment management, but how did you first become involved in expert witnessing?
You know, it's interesting. I was contacted about a very high-profile case for a musician. In fact, it was a wrongful death lawsuit for probably one of the biggest entertainers in the entire on the earth. And I did a series of just interviews with the legal team, and I basically presented my case, how I would defend the case, what questions I would ask, and they selected me, and I did some consulting initially, and then I partnered with Roundtable Group on a professional level. And yeah, there's been no looking back. It's been a pretty wild journey for as far as an expert witness, because I feel like in this specific niche of entertainment, musicians, forensic tour accounting, things of that nature, managers, business managers, all those things, I feel like it's a very specialized industry, and not a lot of people are willing to really talk about it or even know, how to, I guess, orchestrate that or demonstrate that for somebody that doesn't necessarily know the industry.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that interview process. When you first get a call and you, out of the blue, an attorney, a paralegal, an assistant, somebody calls you up and they say, hey, I need somebody in this particular niche. How do you vet them to make sure that this is an engagement that you actually want to take?
Well, that's a great question, and that's what I love about Roundtable Group. They send a nice little description about what the case is about, roughly, and then you can sort of match your skill set to the case specifically. And then what they'll do is they'll then send an even deeper brief that kind of really goes through it. And once you get on with the attorneys, I feel like you get a pretty good sense. For me personally, Noah, what I want to know is, do I feel like I'm on the right side of this? And that's my biggest litmus test. It's not so much the skill set, because most of the things that come across my desk, I'm a pretty good match for. And if I'm not, I'll say it. But as long as I'm a good match, but most importantly, I want to feel like I'm on the right side of the case. I never want to feel like, I'm in a position where I have to just morally or ethically make a decision that wouldn't come natural.
So when you say the right side, you mean morally the right side, not necessarily the side that will ultimately prevail.
Correct. I mean, I want to feel like if I'm, let's say, representing a defendant, right? I want to make sure that I believe that that defendant is in the right, for defending whatever happened. Or if I'm, on the other side, I want to make sure that if I'm on the side that's going after somebody, I want to make sure that I feel that that is justified. I want to have it's very important for me to be able, if I'm going to sit on a witness stand, if I'm going to write an expert report, if I'm going to be deposed, I want to feel like I'm the quote unquote right side of the law. I want to feel like I'm defending the right type of client or the right kind of person, knowing that they were wronged, if you will.
What about some of the more mechanical things, like making sure that you have enough time and making sure, you're in a venue that you're familiar with? What about some of the other issues that ultimately compel you to say yes or no to an engagement?
Yeah, I think having the right venue is important. What I do is I'll look at the specific case and I'll ask myself, if there was a time in my career that I could directly relate to the exact specificity of this case. What did I ever see any other scenarios where I look at myself before I take a case? No, I look at myself and I go, if I were on a witness stand and there was a jury and I was getting grilled from the other side, could I have a bulletproof, testimony? Could I stand there with a clean conscience and say, yes, I have seen this before, and here's what the outcome was, and here's how I feel, and could I justify that? Now, you mentioned the right sort of venue or skill set. There are some fringe areas where something might cross over to a category that maybe I've delved into, but maybe it's not my main vertical. In that case, I'll do a little bit of research on my own, and just sort of I might even talk to my friends in a hypothetical situation who do that specific thing, just to kind of say, hey, am I off base here? Again, not with obviously not with disclosing any type of specificity into the case itself, but I want to bounce it off a few people and say, is this sort of where my brain's at? And more often than not, I'll get that kind of confirmation. Oh yeah, you're right on the right pathway. And then I'll feel more inclined to take the case, and I'll feel like my position will be supported, by case law or facts.
Let's talk about engagement letters a little bit, or contracts. Do you have any particular terms that you like to have to protect yourself? For instance, do you have a non-refundable retainer? Do you have project rates versus hourly rates, travel rates? Tell me a little about the structure of your contract.
Well, I probably am one of those like non-jaded experts where I just look at every case where I just want to do it. Part of it is because I get really into it. It's a kind of a nice distraction from my normal daily routine to get into a case. Much like serving on a jury is kind of interesting to some people. I get into it. And so I don't really fuss on the money. I'll ask, roundtable, ask them, hey, I don't know where their budget is. Am I in the right ballpark? And as long as we're in the right ballpark, I may ask for a non-refundable initial retainer, but I'll make it a little lower, it being non-refundable, just not to scare them off. My biggest issue that I've encountered is this whole idea, and I actually, it's something to discuss, but it's this whole idea of, do you tell the client too much on that first interview, or do you not tell them enough? And I feel like I have at some points just sort of spilled my guts all over and told them everything, and kind of it was like, well, why do I need to hire this guy? He just basically told us our entire position. And so I always want to be cautious, but I also, I want to under promise, over deliver. I want to make sure that they know very clearly, one, I'm justified in being on the right side, right? The position that they're on. And number two, I want them to know I'm the right guy for the job. And just the only way I can think to do that is to give them very specific instances and experience that I have. And if I've probably been burned more than a few times where, oh, they didn't call back, or, oh, they settled, or what have you. And I've been a bounce pad. I think there's got to be something to this idea of maybe charging for that initial consult. Kind of like how lawyers will say, we'll get you on the phone and it's a free consultation. But I don't know. We might want to rethink that in the industry a little bit.
That is a fine line to walk, and you're certainly not the first expert who has said as much. In fact, I've heard from a few that they are in such a small niche that there's only one or two of them, and as soon as the other side gets wind that they've retained a particular witness, that immediately, drives it to settlement.
No, I'm still navigating that, and I'm learning kind of the hard way. I think it's just like any business. You have to learn by experience, and you have to kind of ask yourself, okay, I've retained, 3 jobs. I've not retained 10 or 12 that I was perfect for. What's going on here? What's the pattern? And I think you just have to kind of, like you said, it's a fine line. I think you have to toe that line, let them know. And I think what I did in my last one was I said, if I'm retained, I can do XYZ. If you retain me, I'll help you with XYZ. So I make it a little bit more of a sales pitch, if you will, to justify the expenditure. Because I know this is not a small budget item to hire an expert witness, but I also know expert witnesses win cases, right? Or by contrast, they lose cases too if you don't have the right expert. And so therefore, I think it's our job as experts to really justify our worth. The net, right? What are you going to get from me? How much time? And the last team I interviewed with, in fact, they said as much. They said, in their brains, I planted a seed that said, I'm going to save you guys a ton of time on the back end, stuff that you don't even want to pretend to know about. I'm going to spell it out for you. In fact, I even went so far as to say, listen, I'm going to give you all kinds of prompts of things you can ask the other side that are going to make this thing cut and dry. And that really helped. Well, didn't get retained on that one, but boy, I thought I was.
Let's talk about, you've been doing this for a little while now, actually quite a while now. How have you seen expert witnessing in general change? Has AI changed things? Has telepresence changed things? Did COVID change things?
Okay, well, when I first started, everything was not digital. And so I've seen a shift from, I remember one of my first big cases with a major mega pop star that was like a 1 year long case. I remember I would have to take big legal file boxes. They'd ship them to my front door and I'd pile them in the back of my Land Rover. And I'd tell my wife, hey babe, I gotta leave for the weekend. And I would go to like a flea bag motel in the middle of the valley and just pile the boxes, like stack them high. I'd have like 8,000 Post-it notes and it'd be like, all right, I'm just gonna zone in and just lock in and like sort them and sift them. Now it's just so digital. Everything is tracked digitally. It's honestly a lot easier, I will say.
Mm,
The second
searchable.
Yeah, and the second shift that I've noticed has just been, Chat GPT. AI is truly changing the game. A buddy of mine who's a very prominent immigration lawyer, I asked him, I kicked him around a couple questions and he said, hey, he goes, you need to go to the law school of Chat GPT. And I was like, oh, bro. And sure enough, every single subject that I've ever broached with Chat GPT, like it never even has to think about it, Noah. It'll spit out a full freaking legal brief in like 2 seconds. You're like, how is this possible? So I feel more so I feel for the lawyers because I don't know how you quantify, writing, complaints or certainly, when it comes to an expert, a report has to be extremely specialized, in my opinion. And I can't say that I've used Chat GPT for a report at all, ever. But I did use it for reference material, which was incredible. So for me, it's helped look up case law. It's helped look up resources, third-party resources and books and things that maybe I didn't know were around, things that I could read that would support my case. So from that standpoint, it's just gotten better and easier and quite frankly, a time saver.
I also want to just throw in my usual disclaimer to all expert witnesses. If you plan on using AI, make sure you check with your attorney because there are disclosure requirements in most, if not all, jurisdictions these days. So something to look out for. And how do you see the role evolving into the future as we hit all of this technology? What do you think is next?
I think honestly, where my gut is there's never going to be a replacement for true real world experience and a CV. I think your CV,
Right.
your background is going to speak volumes. And, I have this little joke with myself where it seems like a lot of these experts that I work with, specifically in the music industry, are kind of over the hill. For example, I worked for this major pop star, and the other side's expert witness was, sort of this sort of 70s rock and roll thing. And I thought, oh, this is such a great distinction because that guy's experience is 70s rock and roll. Mine is, 2000s pop music touring the world. Well, it just so happened that the case was about a pop star, right? So, I feel like you should never we charge what we charge for a reason because
Mhm.
we have the skill set and you can't AI and all the technology in the world is not going to be taking the place of how eloquent of a speaker you are, how
Sure.
sharp your brain is on the subject matter. Anyone could write a report in using technology if they needed to, the same way that somebody could write a book and plagiarize and do all those things. But nothing will ever take the place of a brain that's had decades of experience in your specific vertical. And therefore, that is why expert witnesses will always have a role, will always have a place, and will always command, you know, a good, solid, fee for your services.
Earlier, you had mentioned the importance of morality in being an expert witness and deciding whether or not you're going to take the engagement in the first place. Along those lines, and more generally, What do you find meaningful about being an expert witness? Or put another way, why are expert witnesses important?
Every case I've been, and I'll use this as a little plug, every case I've worked on, I've been on the right side. We've won. And for me, that means I'm morally doing the right thing. So for example, if I'm working for a major, let's say music star, and let's say that music star has been, let's say, taken advantage of financially, right, by XYZ sources, and I can get behind it and I read every email, every communication, all the depositions, and I go, wow, they were really screwing this girl over. It feels good at the end of the day, the same way it would on a jury. It feels good that we have the law and the justice system here in the United States, for all its flaws, that we have a recourse, that people can actually get on the right side, and that a judge and a jury will decide, hey, there are damages here. You were harmed in this, and make it right. And I love that. Even Noah, all the way down to like small claims court, to the guy that messed up my house and agreed to paint my house for X amount of dollars, and he messed it up. And I went to small claims and I blew up a major board and I took pictures of the entire house, of all the mess ups and how it was ruined. And the judge said, what? And I held up the sign, and the judge literally said, sir, is this your work? And he said, well, yeah. And he said, so you never finished the job? And he said, well, no, I wanted more money. He said, but you agreed to do it for XYZ? Well, yes, but he didn't pay me the more money I wanted. Boom, case dismissed, full refund. Like, that is amazing to me, dude. Like, it's so crazy that we have, for all its flaws, we have every single person. If you have been harmed or you have been wrong, I sound like a accident attorney here, but if you've been harmed and you've been wronged, you have an option. You have a recourse. You don't have to just suck it up and take it. So that's where I get fired up about it.
Do you typically follow cases to their conclusion once your portion is done? Because a lot of people might not realize that expert witnesses only, often will serve a tiny slice of the entirety of the action that get brought in at some point, and then they're done. So how do you go about finding out the final disposition of a case? Do your lawyers typically contact you? Do you contact them? Tell me about it.
Always I reach out to them. In fact, while a case is ongoing, I'm reaching out as well. How's it going? Is there anything you need? I want to know what's going on. And obviously I want to know where it ends. In larger cases, let's just say, those become public record. Those, oftentimes those cases are very widely, publicized. In one instance, I had a team call me and invite me down to, LA. They said, we want you to come to the W Hotel. And I said, okay. And they said, come to the very top of the hotel. It was the whole legal team. We need to talk to you. And I walked in and it was like they were popping bottles and stuff because we won the case. But it was like they said, your testimony was critical to winning this case. And so I felt like the man of the hour. It was a great feeling to be a clinch, like a linchpin in a case, and to have done such a great job, and helped me buy another house. And it was a lot of money, but at the same time, like, I felt like I was on the right side. It was just a triumphant moment for me, and it gives me that satisfaction.
Are there any other tentpole cases or seminal moments in your career as an expert witness that either redefine something that you do, changed your mind about something, or even reinforce something that you were already doing? Obviously, we know you can't give a lot of specifics out.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's come up, and a lot of it has to do with financial. And I do a lot of forensic tour accounting. I go through the books. I look at who was paid what percentages, who was taking advantage of whom. And quite frankly, one of the things we see on a regular basis where I get retained is artists or musicians or entertainers, actors. They have management teams, they have business management teams, they have booking agents, and everyone gets paid regardless. And then whatever's left over at the end of the day for the actual artist, that's up for discretion. And I feel like, for me, one of the things that this career has done has really helped me be more proactive with the clients I manage and I represent to make sure that there's complete transparency across the board when it comes to the books and the finances. And also the warning flags if things aren't going well for them. You know, hey, this month there's a reason why your overhead is high, you're paying XYZ. And I think just transparency in accounting and that would solve so many problems. And now when I consult, that's one of the biggest areas of consulting, whether it be with artists who are looking for new management or disputes, things like that. The first thing I ask is, were they transparent with the books? Were you able to log in? Did they send you regular reports? Do you know where your money went? And that's the number one thing.
Speaking of red flags, are there any engagement red flags that you can think of that, oh boy, I thought this was going well, but all of a sudden this happened and I'm just not so sure? And if so, what do you do about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I go back to the thing where the initial interview I found, if it's 20 to 30 minutes, that's about right. Anything over about 30 minutes, you start to get into territory where they're asking a lot of questions. And now you kind of go, all right, this should not have gone past about 20 minutes. It's a chance. You've already seen my CV. You know my experience. You probably have already decided I'm the guy for the job. Maybe you're interviewing others, but anything beyond that, you're milking the pot. And so those are the red flags. If it goes beyond 20, 30 minutes, that initial interview, that initial Zoom where I meet the team, I start to get red flags. If they're asking too many questions, and I've had that happen. I prefer, here's a little tip if you're an expert witness, I prefer a Zoom where I can look at them on, in the eyes and see who they are, see what kind of office they're in. As small of a detail as that sounds, I found the ones where it was just on a phone call, where it was a team, I don't know. I feel like they felt a little bit more empowered to ask more questions for free. And on a Zoom, I felt like I've had a little bit more control to be able to orchestrate my position without, giving them the entire case that they need.
Do you feel the same way about telepresence generally? Do you prefer telepresence or in-person depositions or trials, for instance?
I prefer in person, mainly because, well, I get paid, right, to go in person, and I like to travel, and that's just me. But I also feel like in person, I can read a room. I want to know who's in the room. I don't like Zoom depositions. I just never have. But that's unfortunately or fortunately, that's how a lot of them are done now. And it's just due to finances and logistics and all the things. But I still prefer in person. I like to be able to read a room. And I've had my best performances, if you will, because that's what these are. They're performances. Let's cut to the chase. You're performing and you're working. I've had my best results with in person.
Before we wrap up, do you have any last advice for experts or attorneys working with experts?
Yeah, I mean, I think just be respectful of your own time and their time, but more importantly, you are your own most valuable asset. Protect that. Don't give away the farm. Don't cut your worth down because you feel like you're too expensive. I had a rate sheet that let's just say it was more than probably 5 years old, and I just hadn't updated it, just hadn't even thought to. And I found out what ultimately the going rate was, and I had to backpedal. So just know that, like, it is okay for you to charge what you need to charge. And if they don't want to pay it, they won't. And that's okay. Protect your value, protect your worth. Your sanity is worth more than getting involved in something that, once the pressure's on and you're going to have to perform, you need to get compensated for it. So that's probably my best advice other than marketing yourself. You should be on every, you know, every single social media platform. I actually have a website, Noah, called rockstarnetworker.com. I don't monetize it at all. It's free. There's a free download there, and it helps expert witnesses and people in my specific industry market themselves via social media. I would encourage you to do a Google search of yourself, find out what's out there if you haven't already. But feel free to go to rockstarnetworker.com and download my 15-page ebook on how to 10x your exposure in whatever industry you're in. Mine is geared toward the music industry, but whatever industry you're in, this also works. So you are your own best advocate and your own best marketer.
Sage advice, and we'll definitely check it out. Mr. Ciemny, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Noah, for having me. It was a pleasure.
And thank you, as always, to our listeners for joining us for another edition of Engaging Experts. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Engaging Experts. Our show notes are available on our website, roundtablegroup.com.